One of the most fan-pleasing ranges from Big Finish Productions in regards to their Doctor Who releases is the Classic Doctor's New Monsters sets, which come out every couple of years. They've been doing these since 2016, and Classic Doctor's New Monsters Volume 1, 5th Doctor Weeping Angels, 6th Doctor The Judoon, 7th Doctor The Sycorax. This is where, canonically, the Doctor encounters blood control for the first time, and it's a lot of fun. The 8th Doctor in the Time War with the Sontarans, the 4th Doctor and the 8th Doctor with Vashta Nerada, 5th Doctor and the Rachnos. We've also got, with the Stuff of Nightmares set, which came out in 2022, we've got the Dream Crabs, the Mox of Balhoon, we've got the Tivolian, and now, a couple of years later, we have Classic Doctor's New Monsters Volume 4, Broken Memories. And basically here we've got all of the creatures that Stephen Moffat has invented. We've got the 4th Doctor and Sarah with the Harmony Shoal from Husbands of River Song and the Return of Dr. Mysterio. We've got the 6th Doctor and Mel with the Clockwork Droids from Girl in the Fireplace. And we have the 7th Doctor and the 8th Doctor in a two-parter with The Silence. But let's go through these in order. Firstly, we've got Invasion of the Body Stealers by Jonathan Morris, where the 4th Doctor and Sarah are on a bit of a holiday, but then they spot a ship that has crash-landed near their location, and they go to investigate, only to find that its pilot has a massive cut in the middle of their head. This is a story written by Jonathan Morris. Let's play a clip from Invasion of the Body Stealers.
Doctor, over here.
What is it?
I don't know, but I think it was the pilot. Do you recognize the species?
No. Some form of insectoid race. Native to a low-gravity world?
A giant grasshopper strapped into the driving seat. Oh, it must have been killed in the crash.
Yes. What makes you say that?
The great big cut on its head? Look, it goes almost all the way round.
But that's not a new injury. A scar is formed as part of the healing process. When that happened, it was still alive.
So it died before the crash. That's why the crash happened.
Well, if it is dead, and I'm not sure it is, there's still neural activity.
So it is still alive.
Alive, but unconscious. Whether as a cause or effect of the crash is impossible to say.
So, what do we do? The kiss of life? Smelling salts? I know first aid, but I'm not sure it applies to 6-foot-tall field insects.
Hey, are you all right in there?
Hello, yes, we're both fine, aren't we, Sarah?
Oh, mustn't grumble.
I do love the 4th Doctor and Sarah dynamic. I think that Tom Baker and Sadie Miller are a really great pairing. Yeah, that was Sadie Miller, who is playing Sarah Jane Smith instead of the late, great Elizabeth Sladen. And Tom Baker reprises the role of the 4th Doctor. This is one of the more recent recordings that he's done as the 4th Doctor. This was recorded in 2021. But yeah, Invasion of the Body Stealers is a solid, fun caper where the 4th Doctor and Sarah are in the middle of a invasion, a very slow invasion from the Harmony Shoal, which, if you remember, are those big brains in jars from Return of Dr. Mysterio and the Husbands of River Song, where the brains are able to hop from body to body. They're left with a great big scar in the middle of their face, which they're able to open up and put the brains in and other items as well. It's a fun Stephen Moffat concept visually, and I think that visual fun and campy nature is kind of lost a bit in the audio medium. I still think that the story itself is solid. There's some fun character dynamics here where you're trying to figure out who is a Harmony Shoal, who is a person who has not been infiltrated. That's one slight advantage to the audio medium, because you're not fully able to tell who is who just by the voice alone, whether or not they've been possessed yet, which is able to keep the tension high for the most part. But really, there's not an awful lot to the story. There's some strong characters, though. I think Helen Lloyd, who plays a doctor in the story, Dr. Juliet Jasp, does a really great job, basically playing dual roles, because she goes between a doctor who's trying to sort of upend and usurp the 4th Doctor's authority to one of the leaders of Harmony Shoal when they inevitably get taken over. Yeah, honestly, there wasn't too much to talk about with Invasion of the Body Stealers, other than the cast were really strong and there were some great moments. I honestly, not to discredit or talk bad of Tom Baker, but I do feel like you could feel his age in this particular story. Like there's just, there's some still really great dialogue. It's still a really great performance. But I was listening to Storm of the Sea Devils, and I reviewed that last week. That was recorded a couple of years before this one, and you can definitely feel the extra years, in my opinion. It's still a strong performance, but it did take me out of it a little bit. Invasion of the Body Stealers, it's fine. It's a fun, playful story with the Harmony Shawl, but I think that Harmony Shawl works significantly better as a visual character, as a visual antagonist, than they do in the audio medium. Worth trying, and it makes sense for Broken Memories, where you really want to emphasize the Stephen Moffat characters, the Stephen Moffat villains. But I think that the Harmony Shawl might have been a little bit of a write-off in terms of the villains that they could have used for these particular box sets. But we also have the Clockwork Androids in this next story. We've got The Queen of Clocks by Jacqueline Rayner. And Jacqueline Rayner is now, I think this was recorded and written before Waterworlds and the Sixth Doctor Adventures with Mel and Hebe, because in the behind-the-scenes interviews after this, Jacqueline Rayner is like, I've not written a Sixth Doctor, a Mel story, and now I want to immediately do a dozen more. So I think that she wrote this and then went on to do the Hebe Harrison stories, Purity Unbound, Purity Unleashed, etc., etc. But yeah, so The Queen of Clocks follows the Sixth Doctor and Mel, where they land in a castle which is under siege from clockwork androids, and it's the characters inside of this castle are very, very eccentric, and they're very obsessed with time. You've got the Queen of 11 o'clock, you've got the Queen of 10 o'clock, you've got all these people who take hourly shifts in order to check all of the clocks in this castle to make sure they're still functioning. At midnight, the clockwork androids, they shut down the ones that are trying to besiege the castle, and then they start the cycle several hours later after recharging. It all happens by clockwork. However, this is the final night of the siege, where at midnight, the people of this castle are going to be rescued by a dropship, which is coming to collect them and pick them up at midnight. So they need to try and survive until then. However, the Sixth Doctor and Mel have landed, and they've disrupted this cycle, and now all hell is breaking loose as these clockwork androids are trying to break into this castle. We've got Patterson Joseph as Harbolt, who is one of the clockmakers, who is working for the Queen. The Queen is played by Finty Williams. Let's play a clip from The Queen of Clocks.
Cogwheels, springs, escape mechanism. Isn't there anything electronic in there?
Nothing. It's entirely powered by clockwork. Ingenious. Well, seems a crime to dismantle it.
Well, if we don't, it'll probably dismantle us.
Well, needs must when the devil drives. Shame none of your machines work.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. Didn't know how to work half of them, even when we did have the power.
I thought you said it was your workshop.
Well, this is the Royal Clockmaker's workshop, and I am the Royal Clockmaker, so technically it is my workshop. But the stuff was here long before me. So, you've got your basic droids, metal and clockwork, and a big dash of grease. Out there, maintaining the ship and such.
The ship we came here on. The Catherine de Medici.
Oh, you're a colony.
And going by the name, from Earth.
Yes, the ship...
Must repair.
Doctor, it won't let go of my hand. Oh.
Stay calm, Annette. Mel, take those components out of its reach. Otherwise...
Doctor, it's putting itself back together again.
Then we have to take it apart again. Everyone grab a limb.
I know that there's been an awful lot of Sixth Doctor stories this particular month. There's the Quinn Dilemma, there was the Sontarans versus Rutans Born to Die story as well, and now we've got a Sixth Doctor, Mel and Clockwork Droid story. What can I say?
Even more of me!
But out of the 4 stories, or 3, because the 7th and 8th Doctor one is technically a 2-parter, the Queen of Clocks is incredible. It's such a wonderful, haunting listen. And what's interesting, somebody in the chat earlier said that they love the Clockwork androids, but they should have been a one-off. What this story does in particular, the Queen of Clocks, is that, it's kind of roughly sort of vague enough that the Clockwork connection and their repair droids and stuff, that's almost like an accidental coincidence. It's almost like, I like to think that Stephen Moffat wrote Deep Breath, the first story of the 12th Doctor, and was like, oh, I just so happen to have written another story with a Clockwork android. Oh, let me throw in a Girl in the Fireplace reference at the end. Like, it kind of feels like it's an accidental thing as opposed to something that was engineered from the ground up for this story. But Jacqueline Rayner has crafted a wonderful hour-long story that's really, really somber, that's really airtight in terms of its logic and its story. It's something that, as soon as I finish listening to it, I just immediately wanted to listen to it again. And I can't talk too much about why, because so much happens in the third act that twists everything on its head from what you thought was going on. I'd be interested in knowing people who, for whatever reason, listen to Big Finish to the extent that they will listen to The Queen of Clocks from Classic Doctors, New Monsters, Volume 4 Broken Memories, but haven't listened or watched The Girl in the Fireplace yet. Those are people who I would be fascinated to listen to the opinions on this story of, because I think that if you've watched Girl in the Fireplace, you might see some of the twists coming, but it's fine because you know, but the characters don't know. There's the dramatic irony there. But I would love to know somebody who hasn't watched The Girl in the Fireplace but listens to The Queen of Clocks. I want to know what your reaction was. I want to know if you saw the twist coming. I want to know if the ending impacted you as much as it impacted me. The drama from the Sixth Doctor and Mel is really palpable. Joseph Patterson and the rest of the cast in general, but Joseph Patterson in particular, really, really terrific. And I've said this before with Big Finish stories, you know you're onto a really, really good one when the plot ends, but there's still 10 or 15 minutes of the story left. That's how you know you've got something pretty special here. But The Queen of Clocks is really moving. It's a wonderful story about sort of like the inevitability of cycles of history. You know, like history does go in cycles. It does go like clockwork, where you have these rises and these falls of empires, or like these people who are stuck in their ways and they try and break out of the cycle only to repeat themselves again, or in different, more devastating ways. It's such a really lovely story, and I can't dive too deeply into it because it would require going into spoilers, and I think if you go into The Queen of Clocks not knowing as much as possible, outside of it's the Sixth Doctor, Mel, clockwork androids from The Girl in the Fireplace, but you can kind of ignore that detail possibly. It's really, really effective. This was a wonderful listen. Jacqueline Rayner is like one of the undisputed best writers for the Sixth Doctor, and just in any medium. I was going to say in Big Finish, but just in any medium generally. And she's been there since nearly the beginning. Didn't she do the Marion Conspiracy, which was like one of the very first Sixth Doctor stories for Big Finish 25 years ago? And she still is able to make this character like really resonate and come off the page. And Colin Baker's terrific as well, but so much of it does come down to the writing. So much of this does come down to her characterization and how she's able to explore this really thoughtful and introspective part of the Sixth Doctor that we don't see much on the TV screen, because like we just weren't afforded that when Colin Baker had his like 2-season run as the Doctor in the 80s. But we get it in Big Finish, and we get it here. Queen of Clocks is like my head and shoulders favorite standout of this box set. And along with a Victory of the Doctor for the 11th Doctor Chronicles Victory of the Doctor is probably my favourite Big Finish story of the year so far. Like, I know, I acknowledge we're only like 3 months in, and things can change drastically over the next 9 months, but Queen of Clocks is really, really good, and it's almost worth the price of admission alone. These are some really good, like, 6th Doctor stories from these classic Doctors, New Monsters one. The Judoon one from the first one is really, really good. So yeah, Queen of Clocks, really, really good. But don't sleep on The Silent Priest and the Silent City by David K. Barnes. So, what's interesting with the classic Doctor's New Monsters range is that with the 8th Doctor, they do things a little bit differently. For the first one, they had a classic villain with the Sontarans, but they justified it by saying that it was from the Time War. And that they sort of modernized it, and that kind of makes sense. But for Volume 2 and Volume 3, what they did is that they have the 8th Doctor encounter villains, monsters from earlier on in the box set to essentially make a 2-part story. Volume 2 has Night of the Vashta Nerada by John Dorney with the Fourth Doctor, and then at the end of the box set, it's Day of the Vashta Nerada by Matt Fitton with the Vashta Nerada in the Time War with the Eighth Doctor. And then in the Stuff of Nightmares, there was this Dream Crab story with the Sixth Doctor and Mary, and then the Eighth Doctor and Charlie in Together in Eclectic Dreams and If I Should Die Before I Wake, with another story by Jacqueline Rayner because she's such an absolute queen. And with Classic Doctor's New Monsters, instead, they flip it on its head a little bit. They start the story with the Silent Priest, with the Eighth Doctor searching for solace in the Time War, and he goes to this luxurious, like, recreational planet with a city called Sunset. And Sunset used to be this wonderful holiday destination. People would come from all across the universe to have a good time there, especially in its casinos. However, it's been beset now by two crime families, and the crime families are tearing the city apart. Good people are caught in the middle, caught in this conflict. However, they catch wind of this church in the city of Sunset, where people come in, and they come back out again feeling significantly better about themselves, more uplifted, way happier, with a clear conscience, but they don't remember what happened. They don't know what's gone on in that church. So these two crime families want to know what's going on. And the Eighth Doctor is also one of these people who has come into this church and is feeling rejuvenated, is feeling the weight of the Time War and all the consequences it brings lifted from his shoulders, but he doesn't know who he spoke to when he was in that church. He gets kidnapped by one of the crime families whilst trying to work with the police investigation in the city of Sunset. Let's play a clip from The Silent Priest.
Albion Graves thinks I killed his brother a few years ago. Or rather, that I gave the order to have it done.
And did you?
No. And I don't know who did it. But try telling him that.
The two of you are tearing this city apart. It has to stop.
I'll think about it. And you think about my offer. Because if you hold the secret to this affair, and you choose not to help me, then your stay here at the Baratza could well become uncomfortably permanent.
If you just mean I'll kill you, then say so.
Why not? Make yourself at home.
Okay, Doctor. You can tell them what you know, which is nothing, or you can try to escape. Am I under guard?
Yes.
Thought so. What you really need right now is a plan. What's that? Hello, is someone there?
Doctor!
My. And who are you?
People in the chat earlier are asking, oh, how do they do the silence on audio? I think you might be overthinking it slightly, because the characters obviously don't remember the encounters, but the audience are privy to them. The audience hear the conversations. It's traditionally formatted for the most part. Sometimes the silent will be like, we've had this conversation 5 times, please don't turn your back again. That does happen a couple of times, but I think you're overthinking how the silence could work in the audio medium, at least in regards to this particular box set. Maybe other box sets that Big Finish have used the silence for. There's a unit one with Gemma Redgrave and Ingrid Oliver. There's a silence box set, a silence themed box set there. But yeah, so basically the Silent Priest is almost like a subversive neo-noir crime thriller. Well, like I said, you've got these two crime families who are ripping this city apart, and they want to know what's happening in this church, and the Doctor's sort of the middleman trying to broker a deal here, but he doesn't quite know what deal he's brokering because he doesn't know what's happening in the church himself. All he knows is that something is legit happening in there, but I also want to try and save this city because people are being torn apart because of this crime family. It's an interesting parallel to the Time War, where you've got these two opposing sides in this city, people caught in the crossfire, and the Doctor is trying to stop them from ripping apart this whole establishment, and they don't even really know what they were fighting about. There's been the legends of oh, this person killed my brother, but I don't know who or when. So obviously Time War parallels are there with the Daleks and the Time War and all the collateral damage in the middle. So but it feels like that was a little bit of a slight garnish, I guess. It kind of feels like that was only a little side detail there to just make the story a little bit richer textually. But the idea of the silent here acting as a confessional priest where people go in, they confess their sins or whatever, and then forget the encounter. But because they have confessed, they feel uplifted. They feel like the burden has been lifted from their hearts and their shoulders. That's a really interesting idea. And then the idea is explored further in The Silent City, which is a story with the 7th Doctor. But of course, the 8th Doctor does not remember encountering the Silence here, even though this is an earlier incarnation in this planet, in this city's future. It's an interesting dynamic here, and it's probably the only way that you could tell a story like this where they have no recollection of the villains who they're meant to be meeting, and it also doesn't remotely undercut what happens with the 11th Doctor's era, when they meet the Silence, who are trying to co-opt the moon landing in the 1960s to broadcast their messages and such. So it's an interesting villain to do it. So it's also just a really interesting format for a two-parter. It reminds me of Series 9's Under the Lake and Before the Flood, where it sort of plays at timey-wimey with the linear aspect of the two-part story. But the 7th Doctor is on the City of Sunset, which, since the 8th Doctor has gone, has completely thrived, where the crime families are no longer at war with each other, wealth is being distributed to the homeless people and the downtrodden, and all of the rich people go into the casino, empty their wallets, and then leave and forget that it ever happened, and crime is down, poverty is down. It seems like the City of Sunset is thriving again. And we can't have that, because that's not how, society is meant to work, right? What is going on? Is the silent priest of this story, is the titular silent priest actually using their memory lapsing powers to actually make society better? And is the 7th Doctor actually here to stop it? Maybe, because he doesn't quite know what he's stopping or what's going on. The 7th Doctor is sent into the casino, doesn't know what's going on, has met the manager, but the manager seemed like a pleasant enough person, but he can't remember meeting the manager. So the 7th Doctor decides to call in and report to the police chief while he's at the hotel to let her know what's been going on. Let's play a clip from The Silent City.
Hello, Nala, it's me. I'm back in my suite at the Baratza.
Doctor? Anything to report?
Not a sausage. Listen, Chief Inspector Massey, I've been staying at this awful place for a week now, and your suspicions are wholly unfounded.
You can't say the place is clean. Those people are criminals.
Oh, there's a few hands in the till, some lost property, but nothing on the scale you mentioned. I mean, why don't you just arrest them?
It's not enough. What about the boss? Have you spoken to him?
The boss? Yes, at least I think so.
Doctor!
Yes. I know I have, yes. Oh, nice chap. Very boring. No, I'm afraid you've been barking up the wrong tree.
It makes no sense. There's some kind of conspiracy.
No, just a business preying on the vulnerable, as usual. I'll dismantle it in the morning.
No. Don't do anything rash. We need evidence. Who's that?
I doubt it's room service. Come in. Mr. Shackett.
Mr. Smith?
You can put the laser pistol away. I won't harm you.
Doctor?
Oh, go away, Nala. I can handle it. How long did you know?
From the start. A guy books a room at the Baratza but never plays a game?
Yes. I could have been more convincing. But the game you play has consequences. The stakes are always a bit too high.
Spare me the ethics.
One thing I forgot to mention about The Silent Priest is that because this is like a classic noir type crime thriller story, is that you really have these arch voices and these arch characterizations. You've got like one crime family member who's like a Bond girl, and then you've got the other one who's like, oh, forget about it, yeah, come on, toots. Like it's like these really like broad New York American accents, like gangster style. I love it. I loved it so much. And because this is a sequel to The Silent Priest, The Silent City has like very similar characters who recur over the course of the two stories. Really interestingly formatted, and the moral quandary that it poses is really interesting as well, because the Silence is actually doing really, really good stuff for the City of Sunset and the community, but it's not like entirely consensual, because of course people are forgetting their memories. The Silent has the ability to suggest and hypnotize people as well. Like, people go into the casino after having a meeting with the manager, the Silent, and the Silent is like, okay, you're going to be very, very bad at playing the casino game and you're going to be happy about it. So they lose all of their money, and then the Silent distributes it to the community. Like, the ultra super wealthy who won't miss a couple of million credits here and there going missing, and then it goes to the homeless people. And then, like, it's an interesting moral quandary that the Doctor is sort of trying to stop the Silent from essentially, like, either doing Marxism in action or a West End musical, like I said, very Moffat. But this isn't me trying to say, oh, it's like Kablam, and I'm here to try and defend a Kablam-type ethics story. But no, it's the story itself deals with that contrast. It deals with the moral ambiguity of, do we stop the Silent from doing something that is objectively very, very good for the downtrodden, the people who the Seventh Doctor would try and defend if he were in their position, and try and help if he was in the Silent's position, just in maybe a different way. And the Seventh Doctor as well, he doesn't have a companion. He actually says in the story that he's been in this body for a long time. He's had a lot of thoughts travelling and wandering the universe, and Sylvester McCoy's performance is also really thoughtful in that he's a much more measured and considered Doctor. Like, I know the Seventh Doctor is quite a malevolent and thoughtful Doctor anyway, but towards the end of his life, he ups that up by like several notches, and that comes across in this story. I can't talk too much about it because, like I said, lots of spoilers, but especially because this is the second part of a two-parter. But David K. Barnes has put together a really thoughtful and interestingly structured two-parter, where even if the actual story itself wasn't interesting, the idea that the Eighth Doctor lands in this city and then has to deal with the consequences that he can't remember with a previous incarnation after the fact, that in and of itself is like fascinating Doctor Who structure. But also the fact that I do like the characters, I do like the performances, I love the way that the Doctor in both stories is characterized and how the Silence are depicted, particularly how when this Silence, I won't say gets his comeuppance, but how the Silence is dealt with at the end of the story. Really interesting like observations about who gets consequences for breaking outside the rules. And I was reminded today as well, there was a news story that, Donald Trump is having to like pay like $500 million or however much for like his legal fees, or otherwise if he doesn't pay up, his assets will be seized in New York. But then there was a news story this morning about how he's able to like stop his assets from being seized if he can like pay $50 million. I can't remember the exact story. But people were rightly saying that, people get arrested for, like, being $100 in debt for, like, petty crime, for small things. But Donald Trump's able to get away with it because he's, like, a millionaire or a billionaire or however much he's willing to prop up and lie about his personal fortune. And that dynamic happens at the end of this box set, where it's like, oh, okay, this Silent here is trying to make things better for the poor and the downtrodden, is trying to fix wealth inequality. Can't have that, but, it's interesting. That's all I'll say there. This would have made an incredible two-parter, like, for the 60th anniversary, if they were able to get more than one Doctor. This is, like, such a great multi-Doctor story, where the 8th and the 7th Doctor are contending with the Silence in the same city only a couple of years apart. Really great formatting. Queen of Clocks is still such a massive gut punch, but this two-parter, the Silent two-parter by David K. Barnes, is outstanding as well. This is such a good box set. I don't want to try and discredit Invasion of the Body Stealers because it's fun, and Tom Baker and Sadie Miller are a great pairing, but you put this next to these three, it didn't have a chance. I'm so sorry. And I like Jonathan Morris as a writer, but Invasion of the Body Stealers is like, yeah, let's have a fun little caper with this 8-foot-tall grasshopper. And then Jacqueline Rayner and David K. Barnes rock up like Giga Chads. It's kind of unfair. But Broken Memories is a really good classic Doctor's New Monsters release. I think that all of the box sets are pretty good. I don't really recall much from Stuff of Nightmares, but I remember really liking The Tivolian Who Knew Too Much by Robert Valentine. But this is probably the best of the quartet. I need to revisit Volume 2 in particular. But yeah, I think this might actually be my favourite of the of the quartet so far. You've got some really good stories here, but especially these last three. Really great stuff. And like I said, Invasion of the Body Stealers isn't bad. It's just like a fun pop sci-fi thriller body snatcher story. But these three really came to play. Really great stuff. So yeah, Broken Memories. You can get it on the Big Finish website right now, digital download or collector's edition CD. I highly recommend it.